Howdy folks, welcome back to Duke Frazier Productions. In today's video we got something a little special. We've got a Uberti made Paterson and we're going to take it out to the range and see what she can do. Stay tuned. Alright folks, before we get started shooting the Paterson here, I want to talk about a couple quick things. I'll mention this several times here in the video as well, that these Uberti Patersons are not made anymore. The only company out there making the Paterson is Pietta. I really can't afford to get a Pietta Paterson as much as I'd like to have one. They're just kind of out of my reach. But I did come across this one at a fairly reasonable price, a little bit cheaper than the Pietta made ones. And I kind of like Uberti more than Pietta anyway. So I went ahead and I got this gun and I really like it. But like I said, these aren't made anymore, and I checked VTI gun parts. Usually they're the ones that have a lot of parts for a lot of guns that aren't made, and they don't have parts for these hardly anymore at all. I think the lady said they had a couple screws and a couple of the trigger springs and the bolt springs, and that was about it. The nice thing that I know about these though is what I heard from the lady at VTI gun parts is that the springs from a Pietta will fit this gun. They might have to be fitted by a gunsmith, but they will fit this gun. So some of you may be wondering what exactly a Paterson is. Well, this revolver here is Colt's start into the firearms business. The first guns he made were made in Paterson, New Jersey, and that's how this gun got its name, is the Paterson, for that town. I'm going to do one more quick little blabber and then we'll get to the shooting, because I know that's what you people really want to see. But if you are getting just introduced into the sport and you're thinking about getting a Paterson, don't. Like I said, this is a very complex gun. It's not one that you should be taking apart and to clean very often, because there's so many parts in there, and like I said, you've got to pay attention to where every part goes and how it goes in. So it's very complex to use, and also, you know, it's a little more intricate in the loading process. You have to take the barrel off, you have to take the wedge out, take the barrel off, load the cylinder, pull the cylinder off, cap it, put it back together, and then you can fire it. So this is definitely not an introductory level gun. Now if you've been shooting for years, you know, this gun, you know, it'd probably be a good choice for you if you're a collector, if you've been shooting a long time. But for a first timer, no, definitely do not go out and buy a Paterson. It's way too much money if you don't know if you're going to like the sport or not, and it's a little bit too complex for beginners. Alright, so I just tried to load this thing with 20 grains. There's no way. I couldn't get the wad to crimp down enough to be able to get the ball in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to load it with 15 grains. Now I'm going to use the 38 case to dump the powder in, and that's better. It could probably get a little bit more, but I'm not going to try it. And also I'm going to skip the wad. We'll put grease on top of the chamber here. So I got 15 grains in there. I'm going to throw in a ball. I'll rotate it around so I can get it more square. Now this is how you're supposed to load this thing. You take this little tool here, you line it up on top of the ball, and then you press it down. And it works pretty well. Now we're using 375 round balls, and that's supposed to work pretty good with this. This is an older Uberti, and from what I can tell, it was made in about 1992. So at that age, it should shave the ball still. I noticed they're newer Ubertis. They don't like a 375, they like a 380. Now the same thing again, just so you can see. I'm having a hard time seeing the viewfinder. You load it up, get it squared up on there like so, and then you just press it down. Alright, so now I've got 4 chambers loaded. I'm going to pull this off the gun, and then what I'm going to do, alright, so what I'm going to do, being as I didn't load this with wads, I'm going to take a little bit of my own homemade grease, and we're just gonna wipe that into the chambers. Now I don't usually use grease because it's messy. It just gets everywhere and on everything. But I found out if you use this little popsicle stick or a tongue depressor or whatever you want to call it, and then it works all right. So the last step we're going to do is we're going to cap this. Now you got to remember this is all done off the gun. Later models of the Paterson had a loading lever and a cut in the recoil shield so you could load them on the gun, but this is one of the earlier number 5 models. Alright, so I got 4 capped up. Now I'm going to put it back on the gun. I'm going to bring it around to the empty. I'm going to lock it in place with the bolt. The reason why I'm doing that is because this barrel is a pain in the butt to get on here, and I want to make sure the empty is in line with it. So you get the barrel put back on. I'm going to back this screw out just a little bit so I can get the wedge back in. Put the wedge back in here, and it's stiff, so you got to give it a little tap. That'll do. And then we'll take our loading tool, screw that back down, and then we're ready to fire. And you understand why these things weren't very popular way back in the day, because it takes a considerable amount to get them loaded. So we'll go get the camera reset up for the target range and get the target camera set up, and we'll take a few shots with her. Alright, so we got the Paterson loaded up here. We got her loaded with 4 shots. I've got 5 clay birds out there, but if I can hit 4 in one run, I'll be pretty impressed. So let's take a few shots with it. Now, this is the first shot this gun has ever fired outside of the factory. Well, I got 2, and to be honest with you, I was aiming at the one below and in between the 2. But you know what? That's not too terrible. The first shot I pulled that. The trigger pull I'm not quite used to on this gun, and I twitched it off to one side, so I knew I was going to miss on it. But the other 2, I hit 2 that I wasn't aiming at. This thing did have a little bit of a cap jam on me. As you can see, there's no real place for those caps to fall out of the gun except for right in the hammer notch. Well, bring it up here and get a little closer. And I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but you might see that there's a little channel right here, right where my finger's at, if I can get the light on it just right. There's a little channel, and that kind of lets the caps go past the frame. That one little hang up, though, it didn't go past, it got hung up right in the frame. Another feature of this is it's got this folding trigger, so when it's not being fired, when it's being carried, the trigger is up. When you cock it, the trigger drops down and it's ready to fire. So we'll go load her up and we'll try her again and see how she does, see if we can clean up the last 3. Alright, so we're loaded back up with the Paterson. This time I was able to get 20 grains in the chambers, and I used my 380 round balls, and I tell you what, I'm not going to do that again. Those are pretty stiff and they're kind of hard on that little tool. But we'll go ahead and shoot them this time, and we'll see if they improve the accuracy any. Tell you what, there's a more noticeable kick. Something else that I'm noticing too, and I can feel it, is a recoil. The back pressure from when that chamber fires is making that hammer come back slightly. You can see here it's kind of off kilter a little bit. and then we get a cap jam. There we go. Alright. I don't know where that hit, but yeah, it's blowing the hammer back. I'll come up and show you. It's blowing the hammer back every time. I really can't see where that's hitting at. It's shooting way high. We're not gonna. Yeah, it's really jammed up now. We're not gonna load this that hot again. That's just too much powder for this gun. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna load it with 15 from now on. But I think we'll give it one more try. We'll go back to the 15 grains and the 375s, and then we're gonna call it good for today, because they don't make these Ubertis anymore, and just like the original Patersons, the small parts in there are fragile. So I don't want to break a part in this and then not have a gun that works anymore. Alright, so we're loaded up again with the Paterson. This time I went back to the first charge we was using, 375 round ball and 15 grains of 3F GoX black powder. We're going to try that because the 20 grain charge, like I said earlier, was causing the hammer to blow back from the back pressure. So I'll get my ear put in here and we'll take a few more shots with it. Boy, this thing shoots really high. Yeah, this shoots higher than my 1851 Navy at this distance. Them caps are a little warm. But this is definitely a fun gun to shoot, but it's not one that I want to shoot very often. Like I said earlier, this one isn't made anymore. This is Uberti, and this one was made back in 1992 or 93, as I recall. So parts are pretty hard to get for it, but you can still get a Paterson, or not Uberti, Pietta makes them. They're called the Texas Paterson, and their version is the longer barrel. It's got another 2 inches on the barrel. I've never tried one of them. They're a little bit too expensive for my taste, but I happened to get this one used from a friend of mine. I couldn't pass up the opportunity of having a Paterson, so I went ahead and bought it. But we're gonna call that good for today. I still gotta film the close-up shots on it, and I don't want to shoot it anymore, and I have to, so we're gonna call that good with the targets. Well, folks, that's going to take care of it for the Uberti Paterson today. If you've liked what you've seen in the video thus far, hit the subscribe button below. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook as well at www.facebook.com/Duke Fraser Productions. We're also on Patreon as well. You can check that out at patreon.com/Duke Fraser Productions. And be sure to stay tuned and keep your powder dry.